Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the 2025 Cognizant Classic with our comprehensive preview. So whether you are playing DFS, whether you are betting this event, whether you're playing one and done, round by round drafts on Underdog, Showdown DFS, we've got you covered here in this episode. We're going to tell you everything you need to know about this week's Cognizant Classic. Now, this is going to be a quick breakdown, even quicker than usual because we always guarantee, much like dominoes in the mid 2000s, we guarantee this breakdown in 30 minutes or less. This is going to be quicker than usual this week for multiple reasons. First off, I am battling the flu, so I just don't really have a whole lot of stamina, don't really have a whole lot of energy. I've still put in all the research for this event to give you guys the goods, but if you hear a little change in my voice or if I generally lack the enthusiasm this week that I normally do, that's why. But second, this is a pretty simple golf course to break down. And we're going to talk about why that is, but it's going to be very straightforward. It's going to be a simple breakdown this week. And hopefully it's going to allow us to be very straightforward and very direct with who we're going to be targeting this week in all types of game formats. Anyway, that does it for the intro. Like I said, we got 30 minutes or less and clock's ticking. So make sure you have subscribed to the channel if you're watching on YouTube or to the audio feed if you're listening on audio. That way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour calendar. And if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please rate and review the audio. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. And if you subscribe to the channel, you can get access to all of our college basketball content that comes out weekly as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive into PGA National. All right, so the champion course at PGA National is the host course for the Cognizant Classic, formerly known as the Honda Classic. Cognizant was introduced as the sponsor last year. I have no idea why. I felt like Honda was like a very traditional, very well-known sponsor name. It's no longer the case. It is what it is. Anyway, this is a course that was designed by Jack Nicklaus along with the Fazio brothers, Tom and George, and it just features some very simple kind of 1980s Florida golf course architecture. Like there are probably hundreds of cookie cutter Florida golf courses that could be used in place of this one at this event. But because this one, is designed by Jack Nicklaus, because it has hosted the event for forever, it kind of gets grandfathered into being a host course for the PGA Tour. But it's very straightforward. This is a Florida golf course. There is water lurking everywhere at this course. In fact, this used to be one of the most difficult golf courses that was played on the PGA Tour because of the amount of water that was lurking everywhere, because they would let the rough grow out a little bit thicker, because they would run the greens a little bit faster. It became harder to land your ball and stop it. It was one of the harder tests on the PGA Tour, especially when wind and weather were introduced. But in recent years, especially since the move, title sponsor from Hogna to Cognizant, it's kind of been made to play a little bit easier. It was formerly a par 70. Now it is a par 71. The 10th hole, which was a supremely difficult 500-yard par 4, was now made into a par 5. And so basically just instantly the winning score to par reduced by about 4 strokes because of that move. And then also the agronomy of the grass has changed just a little bit. The fairway grass and rough grass used to be just purely Bermuda. Now it is being overseeded a little bit because of the time of year that the tournament is played. Personally, if you've ever played Bermuda grass, like I'm centered in North Carolina, so a lot of the courses I play are pure Bermuda for fairways and rough. It can be quite difficult when it gets a little bit thicker with that rough, and the fairway is a little bit less predictable if it's per Bermuda, but if it's overseeded, it's a little more carpety, a little bit more predictable, which just makes everything play slightly easier. But the name of the game here at PGA National, even with it getting a little bit easier, is to avoid the water. If you can keep your ball in play, you're going to be in good shape this week. And really, that's going to be one of the defining characteristics this week is I want guys who are in control of their golf ball. Doesn't matter how you get there. If you're in control of your golf ball, you're going to be okay this week. If you can execute point A to point B, then you're going to be all good this week. And now, granted, that's much easier said than done. But how you get there is up to you. And if whether or not you get there is going to be the sole determining factor of whether or not you win this golf tournament. Because essentially with the amount of water that's on the course, there's not really a whole lot of strategic options. Like you're just going to have to play to certain spots off the tee, and you're going to have to hit those spots and give yourself the best shot into the green. You're going to have to dial in your approach shots because if you have a big miss, you're going to be in the water and you're going to be taking a drop. And there's going to be big numbers this week for that reason. And this is a week that is super volatile in terms of missed cuts. Like we've seen a lot of skilled players show up to this event and miss the cut solely because they had 2 water balls on Thursday or Friday. So this is going to be a low 6 of 6 percentage made cut if you play DFS. If you play one and done, this is going to be an event where a lot of your competitors are going to take zeros because they pick somebody who's good at golf but ends up missing the cut due to some water balls at the start of the weekend. Now, I'm not exactly identifying a pure cookie cutter type of golfer for this event. Like I said, you're going to have to get from point A to point B. How you get there is up to you. Longer hitters are often able to club down off the tee or have shorter clubs in for approach, which is a big time advantage. So I don't think you necessarily have to be long here, but I don't want you to be long at the expense of being accurate. So you're definitely going to have to, show that you can consistently play the ball well off the tee and play the ball well on approach, no matter how long of a hitter or short of a hitter you are this week. Now, in terms of the key stats that we are looking at this week, also, I forgot to mention there is the historic bear trap this week, holes 15, 16, and 17. Two par threes and a par four with water lurking everywhere. That is going to be a big theme this week. You're going to see it covered on broadcast. You're going to see it used for prop betting. There are two long par threes and a difficult par four. So if you're looking at betting that, generally the over on strokes is the play. All right, now let's talk about our key stats. So for the key stats this week, we talk about the key stats every week on the PGA Tour. First and foremost, strokes gained approach is going to be one of the biggest this week here at PGA National, especially in the proximity bucket from 150 to 200, because this is going to be a pure middle iron test. A lot of the par threes are in that range, 150 to 200. A lot of the par fours where you have to play your ball off the tee is setting you up for 150 to 200 yard approach shot. So that is the bucket that I'm going to be looking at. And then in terms of off the tee stats, I want to look at total driving and distance from the edge of fairway. These are two stats that are just going to tell me whether or not you're in control of your golf ball off the tee, whether you're bombing it, whether you are a little more dial back. Can you keep your ball in play? Can you keep your ball in good spots? Because to me, those are the two stats that will measure that. And because this is a test where you're going to have a lot of water, I want to look at bogey avoidance. And because this is a Florida golf course, I want to look at strokes gained putting on Bermuda. Bermuda is a tricky surface to putt on if you've ever putted on it in real life. Especially at this course, it can get very grainy. It can be very niche. You can have guys who are good at putting on Bermuda or not good at putting on Bermuda. So that is something I'm going to look at. In terms of comp courses, all three of my comps are all designed from a similar time as this golf course. And two of them are in a similar region of the country. We got TBC Sawgrass, another execution test from tee to green located in the state of Florida with generally Bermuda grass greens as well. You got TBC Twin Cities, which is not in the same region of the country, but water lurking everywhere, an execution test that tends to reward ball strikers. And then TPC Southwind, which is in Memphis. So similar region of the country, also grainy Bermuda grass greens, another course with water lurking everywhere of a similar distance, because this course only plays about 7,200 yards. And if you're looking for a little more ancillary comps, I think you can use any Florida golf course because they're all kind of the same. And then I think you can use Colonial Country Club as another one, just as a place where it's a little bit shorter, but it is a pure execution test with where you have to play your ball. And a lot of the golfers that have done well here at this course have also fared well at Colonial. Now, one more thing I do want to talk about is I did not put this on here, but I do think there is a need to quantify it. Recent ball striking form. If you're not coming in here like playing good golf, this is not a get right spot. This place will eat you alive if you're not in good form. So recent ball striking form is going to be of paramount importance this week. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to dive down the rabbit hole. Now, if you have been with us for a while, you know that I don't mean an actual rabbit hole. I'm referring to the rabbit hole, which is a tool from BetSperts Golf that, in my opinion, is the best data site in the business when it comes to golf data. Basically, the rabbit hole allows you to put all different kinds of filters and conditions on all kinds of statistics for golfers. And it really allows you to dive into the weeds and isolate the micro skills that you need in order to find golfers that excel at a particular course. And it allows you to create a custom model where all that can be quantified. I think it's the best in the business. It's what I use to make my models. And I'm a big proponent of it. Now, here's what I'm looking at this week from the rabbit hole. First off, I just wanted to look at recent ball striking form for the calendar year 2025. Top 5 in the field in that regard: Taylor Pendrith, Jonathan Vegas, Sepp Straka, Alex Smalley, and JJ Spawn. I then wanted to look at going all the way back to the start of 2024, total driving. Top 5: Luke Clinton, Max McGreevy, Matt McCarty, Harry Higgs, and Will Gordon. And then same concept going back to 2024, distance from the edge of the fairway. This is the stat we talked about that measures, basically how controlled you are of your golf ball off the tee. Russell Henley, Ben Coles, Lucas Glover, Zach Johnson, and Brian Harmon as your top 5. And then in general, strokes gained approach going all the way back to the start of 2024. Joel Damon, Doug Yim, Tom Hoagie, Henrik Nordlander, and JJ Spawn were the top 5 in that category. And then also want to look at proximity from 150 to 200. Like we talked about, that is the key range this week. It's where a lot of the approaches are going to come from. And in that category, we got Joel Damon, Kurt Kitayama, Victor Perez, Charlie Hoffman, and Rico Hoey as your top 5. And then I wanted to look at strokes gained putting on Bermuda because Bermuda is a tricky surface to putt on. Top 5 in the field. Actually, we'll do top 10 for this one. Ben Griffin, Max Grazerman, Eric Cole, Chris Gotterup, Taylor Montgomery, Ben Silverman, Brant Snedeker, Mackenzie Hughes, Brendan Todd, and Russell Henley. And then when you look at some of our comp courses, right? This was just in Florida golf courses. The top 10 in that category: Shane Lowry, Sung J M, Daniel Berger, Chris Kirk, Russell Henley, Jordan Spieth, Christian Bezadenhout, Cameron Young, Ben Griffin, and Billy Horschel. I wanted to look at strokes gained tee to green at water-heavy golf courses, just all courses on the PGA Tour where water danger is high. Top 10 in that category: Daniel Berger, Shane Lowry, Russell Henley, Sung J M, Chris Kirk, Cameron Young, Doug Yim, Bryce Garnett, Jordan Spieth, and Jonathan Vegas. And then strokes gained total at all of my comp courses, including the ancillary comps. Number 1 was Daniel Berger, followed by Sung J M, Shane Lowry, Russell Henley, Christian Bezadenhout, Davis Riley, interesting one there, Jordan Spieth, Billy Horschel, Brian Harmon, and Bryce Garnett. Actually, I know why Davis Riley's on there. He won at Colonial, and Colonial was on the list. That kind of makes sense now. Then I also wanted to look at just general bogey avoidance. Best in the field in that category: Bud Cauley, Henrik Norlander, Patrick Fishburne, Andrew Novak, and Mac Meisner. And then par 5 scoring is another thing I wanted to look at. So this place has 3 par 5s, and with there being so few birdie holes and so many bogeys out there like lurking, scoring on the par 5s is going to be vital. You're going to want to make sure you get your birdies on those holes. Best in the field in par 5s: Max McGreevy, Taylor Pendrith, Rico Hoey, Luke Clanton, and Frankie Sappin. Max McGreevy showing up a few times on some of these lists. That's kind of interesting. He might be a value play worth looking at. All right, now throw all that into a model, and here's what we ended up with. Y'all, I think that it's probably a good sign when you make a model and like all the golfers priced near the top of the board on DraftKings and priced near the top of the odds boards show up at the top of your model. It means that you're probably onto something. And that's exactly what happened here in this model for me. Russell Henley was number 1. He's great in the Southeast. He has won this event before. He is a great approach player. Data Golf loves him. If you're familiar with the site Data Golf, he's very high in their rankings because of his ability as an approach player. Data Golf weights approach very heavily in terms of their rankings of golfers. So yeah, no surprise that Russell Henley is going to be number 1. Shane Lowry, number 2, another no surprise. He plays great at this course. He's great at Florida golf courses. He rakes out very well in total driving. He's a guy who is just generally in control of his golf ball, very good in wind and weather and water avoidance, just very good manager of golf course. So I really do think Shane Lowry, number 2, very, very, what's the right word here? Fitting, I guess I would say, that he pops up as number 2. Daniel Berger, number 3. I think Daniel Berger might be all the way back now, y'all. I think this might be the spot where he wins. He very reasonably could have won this event a few years ago. But if you look at what he's been doing recently, right? We're starting to look more like pre-injury Daniel Berger. At the Waste Management Phoenix Open, he gained strokes in every category en route to a runner-up finish. At the Genesis, gained strokes in every category en route to a runner-up finish. But what I'd really like to see is that he gained over a half stroke per round on approach at a course that really should not have fit his game all that well at the Genesis. You know, Torrey Pines is very long iron intensive. That has never been Daniel Berger's jam. Courses that are shorter, like this one, like TBC Southwind that he has multiple wins at, like Colonial that he has won at, tend to be pretty good fits for Daniel Berger. So I do think that this is a really good spot for Berger, and I do think that the recent form coming in makes him a very solid play as well. Ben Griffin, number 4. Look, Ben Griffin, he's a short course king. He is great on Bermuda grass. It is his best putting surface, and he plays what seems like every tournament. And he's another guy like Daniel Berger that played well at a course that I didn't think was going to fit his game well. You know, he came in 4th in Mexico, gaining a stroke and a half per round on approach. And again, a course that I didn't think was going to fit his game all that well. So I really do think that this is a pretty good spot for Ben Griffin. I love that he's getting back to Bermuda, which is his most comfortable surface. And I think that this is probably the type of course that you would see Ben Griffin break through and get his win at. Number 5 is Kurt Kitayama. Has played well here in limited appearances. So whenever I make models, guys like Kurt Kitayama are going to show up very highly just because he's such a great ball striker. His ball striking form coming in is hit or miss. In Mexico, he was actually great in the ball striking categories. He just lost all of his strokes with the putter. So maybe returning to Bermuda grass might be good for him. But to me, Kitayama, of everybody we've seen so far, is probably the most volatile of the top 5 just because he can putt you out of a golf tournament. Jonathan Vegas, number 6, very similar type to Kurt Kitayama in terms of he's always going to show up well on my models because he's such a great ball striker. But also keep in mind, he's won at a course that was one of my comp courses. He won at the, what's the name of it? The 3M Open last year, hosted at TBC Twin Cities. And, his ball striking has just been pretty solid, week in, week out. It was not great at the American Express, but that's only a 1-round sample size. But yeah, I'm probably going to be on Vegas as a value play in DFS. I think that he is a reasonable bet to win the tournament. Probably not the type of guy you'd want to play in one and done, but I'm definitely going to be on Vegas as a DFS value. Definitely going to be on Vegas, as more of a long shot bet to win. Sepp Straka 7, and I got to be honest, I feel like Sepp Straka is one of the best players in this field. You look at what he's done recently. He won the American Express, right? Gaining over a stroke per round on approach. Pebble Beach T7 gaining over a stroke per round on approach. 15 solo at Waste Management Phoenix Open gaining almost a stroke and a half per round on approach. At the Genesis, he was very poor. That's not the type of course that I would have played Sepp Straka at, though, and so he kind of played to what we expected, right? But before that, dating back to Sony, that was 4 straight tournaments of over a stroke per round on approach. That's exactly what we want to see, and that's exactly the formula for Sepp Straka to win golf tournaments. He is not a great around the green player, but you don't need to be a great around the green player here. If you're hitting the greens and you're making your putts, your chipping should not matter. And if you're doing well at the execution of your ball striking, the around the green play should not matter a whole lot. And so Sepp Straka, definitely a guy that I love this week. He's going to be one of my favorites in DFS, potentially a one and done play, potentially an outright bet. 8, 9, 10. You got kind of your usual suspects of guys that I would, kind of picture to play well at this course. Brian Harman, Billy Horschel, Keith Mitchell. Keith Mitchell, outstanding ball striker. Brian Harman and Billy Horschel, 2 guys that are generally accuracy over distance golfers, are generally pretty good controllers of the golf ball. Their recent ball striking form coming in leaves a little bit to be desired, though. That's why they're in the 7K range, even though, if this tournament were held in May instead of March, they probably could play their way into the 8 or 9K range in terms of talent. So I definitely don't mind them being at 8 and 9. Let's see if there's any value plays that popped up for me. Bryce Garnett popping up at 18 is a little bit interesting. Adam Svensson popping up at 16 is a little bit interesting. I feel like I played Adam Svensson here last year. Let me see if that worked out well for me. Well, the one thing with Svensson is that Bermuda is his best putting surface because he's a very poor putter in pretty much any surface. This is the least poor of them. Last year at this event, I believe I was on him. Yeah, he was cut. So I don't really have anything to go off of that. But I can't really tout that one when I thought he was a good fit for the course last year and he ended up missing the cut. Also, a guy that I really like this week's Lee Hodges, number 19 in my model, $7,400 on DraftKings. Has won at one of the comp courses, TBC Twin Cities. It has been pretty solid on approach to start the year, just continues to make cuts, continues to play very safe golf, and that is going to play well for you here at this golf course. So Lee Hodges at number 19 in my model is another guy that I'm going to be interested in for DFS purposes. Now, before we take a look at the board and kind of wrap things up, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, I update this model all week long, and if you want to know who makes the final top 10, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. I write an article every single week where I profile my core plays on DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as the top 10 for my model. And you can get that with access on Patreon. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a bunch of really smart, really good people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. The college basketball chat is jumping. The NBA chat is jumping. The golf chat is jumping as well. So join if you want to talk to some more people about golf DFS. It definitely does have a DFS tilt, though, if you're more of a one and done or a bet person. And then also follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I tweet out all updates for the show on there, as well as, just some general tweets for information as well. So follow me on there if you want to get more. But let's go ahead and let's take a quick breather, and then let's take one last look at the board and talk about strategy, and then we're done. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how the strategy this week is going to be a little bit different from most weeks. So in my personal opinion, this is not a week to go all in on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 golfers, right? Because of how volatile this tournament is with the water and how easy it is for a golfer to miss the cut based off of 1 or 2 bad golf shots, if you're playing DFS this week, I don't think it's a very good idea to lock a golfer or to even go like 80 or 90% of your lineups with one golfer. I think it's a week to go more balanced. I think you still want to play your guys. I don't think you want to play the whole field, but I do think that it's a week to go a little more balanced with your exposures. So that way, if one guy does have a fluke missed cut, you're not totally hampered, totally looking at a negative week because of that, because miscuts can happen to anybody here at this tournament. Now, and also from a DFS perspective, that kind of brings together the question about lineup construction, right? Like, hey, is it more of a stars and scrubs week? Is it more of a balanced build week? And I think the question is kind of neither. I think you can make an argument for either build, because either way, there's still a chance that any golfer can end up missing the cut at this golf course, right? So I do think that when you're looking at the DraftKings board, I do think that there's a little bit of a fall off after about Brian Harmon at $7,700. So I do think that you probably want to get more of your golfers above that cutoff line than below it. But in terms of making a build, just trying to avoid the landmines is going to be the case this week. And later on in the week, when sites start offering ownership projections, this is a good week to fade the chalk and not kind of play all the chalky guys. If you're betting, it doesn't impact strategy at all. Just know that, you could have an outright ticket on a guy and by Thursday morning, he's done because he's put 2 water balls, right? So not really a whole lot of difference in strategy there. All right, now let's talk about some DraftKings plays that we haven't already mentioned. We've already mentioned that we love Henry, Lowry, and Berger at the top. I'm probably going to be starting my DraftKings lineups with a lot of them, and I got a little something to say about one and done for all of them as well. I do have a fade up here, and it's going to be Sung J M. I am greatly concerned with Sung J M's approach play recently. He has lost over a stroke per round on approach in 3 straight events. This is not the place where you want to come in with that kind of form. It's just not. So to me, that makes Sungjae, even though he's got, great course history here, even though he, has great comp course history, that recent approach play makes him a total cross off for me. I think he's an easy fade. Another guy that I think is an easy fade is going to be Cameron Young, $8,800. When you look at Cameron Young's profile on any data site, including the rabbit hole, which we're looking at right now, he's lost strokes on approach and lost strokes on approach big time in 7 straight events. It's not good. It's not what we want to see, y'all. So Cameron Young going to be another easy cross off this week for me this week. And to me, once you're able to cross off a few guys near the top, it makes kind of building out the rest of your lineups a little bit easier, especially if you're like very easily able to make that decision earlier in the week. It just makes it easier to narrow down your player pool, in my opinion. So those are 2 that I'm going to be crossing off. Now, another guy that I kind of didn't get to mention, but I do love this week is Austin Eckroat. He didn't pop up near the top of my model, probably because his recent ball striking form, recent form in general, isn't all that great. But he did win this event last year, basically just off of a pure execution test, right? Like he was very controlled with his golf ball off the tee. He was very controlled with his golf ball on approach. He hasn't played since the Genesis Invitational. That's 2 tournaments ago. That is not a course that I thought was going to fit his skill set. He missed the cut at the Farmers Insurance, also at Torrey Pines. So I think you can kind of cross those 2 out. He was a little bit disappointing at Phoenix. Just barely missed the cut there, but at Pebble Beach, good ball striking numbers. His big weakness is around the green play. You can see that in his stat profile. And like I was saying with Sepp Straka, I think this is a good place to be weak around the green because in general, if you're executing your shots, you're not going to have a lot of around the green plays. So I really do like Austin Eckroat at $8,100 as the defending champ of this event. And then we've already mentioned in the 7K range, I like Horschel, I like Glover, I like Harmon. I think this is a pretty good spot for Luke Clanton as well. So I have kind of been off the Luke Clanton train. I think that a lot of people place a lot of, what's the word I'm looking here for? Like lofty expectations on these young guys coming up. Like, hey, not everybody's a Morikawa, like going to win a major in their first year returning pro. Not everybody's a Ludwig going to contend in majors in their debuts, right? Not everybody is that guy. Luke Clanton, people want to make him that guy. He hasn't been that guy yet, but he's generally a pretty good ball striker. Whether it's off the tee or an approach, he's always positive in the ball striking categories. Now, the recent approach has been a little bit suspect, but the recent ball striking, when you count off the tee form, has been pretty good. So I don't really know what to do with Luke Clanton, but from the looks of it, when you look at the places he's played well at kind of these shorter, more positional golf courses like the Wyndham, like the RSM Classic, like the John Deere Classic. So I do think that this is not a bad spot for Luke Clanton, just going off of the whole assumption that this is a ball strikers week and he is going to be one of the ball strikers as he matures on the PGA Tour. Now, we already mentioned I like Jonathan Vegas at 7,500. I like Lee Hodges at 7,400. I can't quite figure out why Harry Hall is down here at $7,400. He's playing some of the best golf out of anybody in this tournament, and I would have no problem going back to him. The recent approach for him is not great, but he is an absolute scrambler. If this course ends up playing more difficult than last year, which I don't know if it will, he's a guy that can really scramble, can really putt. And I'm kind of willing to just buy into the fact that, hey, maybe this guy's taking the jump and he is one of the better golfers on the PGA Tour now. And I'm kind of willing to buy into that at $7,400 on DraftKings. I also really like Nico Echeverria and Seamus Power at $7,300. Nico tends to play well at these type of like shorter golf courses. Seamus Power is another guy as well that just is in great control of his golf ball, really accurate player. And he doesn't have great history here, but he was a totally different player back in 2019. Like he was just barely on the PGA Tour. He was a younger guy. Now he's a much better ball striking player than he was then. I'm kind of willing to buy into him at $7,300 as well. And then Eric Cole at $7,200 is another guy that I'm going to be all over. He's at his best putting on Bermuda. He is at his best at shorter golf courses. The recent form has not been great, but the approach has been kind of hit or miss. And if you get a hit, then he tends to have really good finishes. And so, in a week where everybody's going to be a little bit volatile because of the course itself, why not play a guy who's a little bit volatile and can give you a really good finish? So Eric Cole, $7,200, definitely going to make my player pool. And then Sam Ryder is a guy that always plays well in Florida. He's coming in with better form now than he has like into the Florida swing like in recent years. So I think this is a pretty good spot for him. His history at this event is top notch, 3 straight finishes of 21st or better. So definitely buying in on Sam Ryder at $7,100. And then in the 6K range, Andrew Putnam is a guy that I'm going to be on. I'm on Andrew Putnam a lot because he's a pretty good approach player. And I generally just buy into that, right? To me, this is a course where he can win it with his irons. And if he can just kind of keep pace off the tee, he can absolutely let his irons go crazy. And he does have the upside to putt well. Bermuda is not his best putting surface, but he can get hot with the putter. So Andrew Putnam, definitely a guy I'm going to be on at $6,900. And then Victor Perez is another guy that I'm interested in. So last year, just very interesting assortment of finishes, but they all were kind of like at the courses that I would like to see for this one, he was good at. Right. Like the men's Olympic golf competition at Le Golf National. I compared that to TPC Sawgrass. He came in 4th at that tournament. The Memorial, that's another golf course designed by Jack Nicklaus, T12, right? After that, he was 16th here last year. So I kind of like Victor Perez just at the courses he's done well at, like comping over to this one. And the fact that he was 16th here last year, he's only $6,800 on DraftKings. He's going to be one of my sleepers here this week. All right, now let's talk about one and done really quickly. So last week was not a great week in one and done for me. In one of them, I had Steven Yeager, so I got a decent payday in that. And the other one I had Kurt Kitayama. Big total X on that one. He putted himself out of the golf tournament, right? So let's talk about this week. So if you're looking at the board this week, there is no reason to hold anybody back this week. Like honestly, unless you're sitting there and you have a plan to use Shane Lowry at the Open or Russell Henley at the Wyndham or Sung Jae at the 3M or the John Deere or Sepp Straka at the 3M or the John Deere, there's no reason to hold anybody back, right? You can play any of these guys and probably not like regret it as long as they play well. But keep in mind, this is a super volatile week, right? So like there's going to be a ton of people that pick up zeros this week in one and done. And if you can be somebody who picks up a good payday, that can definitely put you ahead of the field. I'm looking at the one and done that I'm in. People have used Russell Henley already, probably because he was a popular pick at Sony. If Henley has been used by a lot of people in your one and done, I think that this is a great week to use Henley. Personally, he's great at this golf course. He's great in the southeastern United States. And if a lot of people have used him and you think he's going to come in lowly owned, then fire away on Russell Henley. But my preliminary pick at the start of the season was Shane Lowry. And so I think I'm going to end up going with Shane Lowry in at least one, if not two, of my one and dones. But I'm probably not going outside of the top 6, I'm sorry, this week. Lowry and Henley make a lot of sense. I'm fading Sung Jae this week. We already talked about. I think Straka and Berger make a ton of sense as well. So those would kind of be my top plays this week for one and done. And like I said, fire away for one and done this week. All right, so that is going to do it for the Cognizant Classic episode. We kept it under 30 minutes as promised. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review. But yeah, that's going to do it, y'all. In 30 minutes or less, we broke down the course. We talked about the data from the rabbit hole. We looked at some golfers that we like in all formats, talked about strategy for all the different formats. So yeah, hopefully we gave you guys some information to pick out some winners here this week. We will be back next week to talk about the Arnold Palmer Invitational, I believe, is next week. Yeah. We will be back next week to talk about that one. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the audio feed as well. And check out all of our college basketball content in between. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Best of luck to you guys this week at the Cognizant Classic. And I will see you guys next time.